The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
There's a girl, she's a star, she's got style. Steffi Star, you see her face around the town, she's popular. Steffi Star.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Weinstein.
And it's your birthday.
It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. It's so funny because our topic today is anything but birthday-ish. But anyway, I'm so excited because
it's basically the opposite of a birthday.
Yes. This is an old friend of mine that I've known forever. Maybe junior high.
I think fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Yeah. Wow. We went to Hebrew school together. We are in a little bit of a debate right now for our Hebrew school trip, confirmation trip. She says we went to Canada. I say we went to New York. I will be texting Marcia Silverstein as soon as the podcast is over to find out. But anyway, let me introduce my dear friend, an old friend of mine, Aimee, Aimee, Aimee Yawnick.
Welcome.
Yay.
Thank you.
And
I'm
for
excited.
all of our high school friends, Aimee Lesberg.
Aimee Lesberg.
Aimee Lesberg.
Yes.
Yep.
And Aimee is a death doula.
Yes.
She is.
Yeah, it is funny. We're talking about death on your birthday.
Yeah. But this is just so
the
great.
opposite end of the spectrum.
Right. Well, I was telling, Cliggy said, what are you doing for your birthday? I said, Aimee Lesberg's coming on the podcast. He's like, wow, is she still doing personal training? I said, I don't think so. I said, she's a death doula. He's like, excuse me? So he had to look it up.
Yeah. Most people do.
Yeah. So where do we even start with this?
Let's describe, or if you could tell those listening, what a death doula is.
So think about a birth doula, right? A birth doula helps to usher life in. It provides community support and non-medical support and a way for people to express emotions and spirituality and just to be there to support the mother as she's going through this ordeal. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got your death doula. So we help to usher life out. So the same thing, helping the person with spiritual, emotional, relational issues that they might want to talk about before they leave this world, help the family to talk about their feelings about what's going on, get everybody on the same page as to what's happening to their loved one and how can we make this a peaceful experience as opposed to a fearful experience, which is kind of what death is for a lot of people.
Right.
I feel like most people are afraid of death. Mm-hmm. Are you afraid of death, Steph?
I'm curious to know how it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I think once I pass, it'll be fabulous.
What do you think happens once you die?
I think everyone is there waiting for you. And I think that as you're going through the process, you've got anyone who's been looking over you or whoever is like, come on. And I think you're just a big ball of energy and you go into the atmosphere and you can go wherever you want and you're just happy and loving and everything is great. And I just feel like we're here in our physical body for, whatever, how long we're on earth, but that we actually never die.
Mm. I tend to agree.
I agree.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, good.
And I think that lessens the fear. I think there's comfort knowing that or believing that your loved ones are there waiting for you, that are going to bring you home, quote unquote, home.
And I just feel like I've looked into this so much and I've read so much and I've listened to so much that I really believe it's true. Mm-hmm. So.
And there's people who do not. I work with someone now who's at the end of her life and she thinks it's life out. It's lights out. So she's having a hard time letting go. She's really grasping on, does not want to leave. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that she just thinks that that's the end.
That there's nothing else.
Yeah, that there's nothing else. And why would you want to just gracefully move on?
That would be, I'm speechless over that thought.
Yeah.
And what a horrible feeling that must be to think that it just, the lights are out and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this life, beautiful life that you've had, it just ends. And then there's nothing ever.
But I feel like, too, even growing up as Jews, they never talked about the afterlife, right?
But apparently that's what we believe. Like that's what Jews believe, is that there is an afterlife.
Well, the 2 Jews I'm with do believe that.
So there we have it.
Perfect. So now, I thought I read somewhere that you also help younger people that aren't dying, but you kind of, what is that about?
Yeah, so there's two parts of the work that I do. I work as a death doula with people at the end of life at bedside and help their families as well.
And so people call you and they say, Aimee, we need help. Our loved one is
at end of life, and we need somebody to help guide us through this. And then on the other spectrum is what I do as an end of life coach. And I've been a coach for 20 years. And this part of the work is about getting people prepared for what their end of life wishes are, so that they can share them with their family, and their family understands what's most important to them at end of life, so that when that time does come, there's no ambiguity. Everybody understands exactly what you want. What
You're
are you
speaking my
laughing?
language.
Tell me.
You're speaking my language.
I know. That's right. Because I was trying to remember, because Meredith's like, make sure. And I couldn't remember. So you might want to hire Aimee, because I don't remember anything you told me.
Well, yeah. So it's the
I'm
workshop.
also a red.
You're also what?
A red.
A red.
So Stephanie and I are listening to a book called Surrounded by Idiots. And the author categorizes humankind essentially in 4 different personality types. And that is very much the need of a red, who like wants things spelled out, very direct.
Right.
Tends to
I know.
insult
You
people
said,
because you're very direct
right.
and comfortable with this and moving forward.
You said you don't want an open casket.
Oh my God. I told my husband I would haunt him for all his days if I
Yeah.
predecease him and he has an open casket for me. I mean, really, I'm going to be gone. So do I really care? No, but still.
Well,
But those are but that's very specific for you, and that's
Right.
what we do. So it's a workshop. It's called What Matters Most, and that's what we do. We dive into 5 major areas of life: spiritual, physical, emotional, your practical stuff like don't have an open casket, and legacy. Like, what do you want to leave behind? How do you want your loved ones to remember you? How do you want to live on in the mind and the hearts of the people who love you? So we do a series of reflection questions, and you look at each one of these areas of your life and you decide what is most important to me. But the fun part of it is that it's all under the scenario that you're going to die in 90 days. So I started a class 2 weeks ago last night. Their death date is May 13th. So on the very first class, I say, this is your death date. You have 90 days to live. Something's going to happen, a major medical event or a car wreck or something will happen. And then a couple of days later, you will die. You will have a few days where you cannot speak for yourself. So the people around you better know what you want, or they're going to be guessing. And maybe they think different things. Maybe your children think that you want an open casket. And another child says, well, no, I'm pretty sure she doesn't want an open casket. And now there's arguments. And now that's the last thing you want for your family at the end of your life, is for them to be arguing about what they think you want.
Right.
So let's figure that out now.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you have a life-threatening illness. You don't have to be at the end of your life or be elderly to take this workshop. You just need to be human and be willing to have these hard conversations so that you can be clear about what you want and you can share that with your family. And then it's done. It's one of the biggest to-dos to check off of your list. And there's a sense of peace that comes with having that done.
That is absolutely magnificent. And I would imagine that people listening, you saying, you got 3 months to live, gave a lot of people anxiety, right? Just even hearing it.
Yeah.
We all know it, right? We all die. Like, I have a friend who's afraid of dying, and I, said, "What are you afraid of? Wait a minute, are you afraid of dying?" And she was like, "Yes," because she had a medical procedure coming up. And I said, "You're gonna die. Like, you're gonna. You can't escape it. We all do it. So why be afraid of it?
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
We're all dying.
We all die.
But the thing is that we don't know when.
Right. Or
And
where or how.
Or where or how.
Mhm.
Yep.
So we're all going through life thinking that, if I avoid this conversation, then I don't have to worry about any
Right.
of this.
Right.
But as we know, anything can happen to anybody at any time. And, a massive heart attack, a car wreck, like anything at any time. So the more prepared you are, the better. It's a gift to your family.
Right.
If nothing else,
Right.
in this workshop, we're really digging into some personal stuff. Like if you've done personal development, this is a really cool way to try to figure out what your priorities are in life and how you can actually start living in alignment with them. Because a lot of us feel like, okay, yeah, I know what's important to me and I'll get to it someday when I'm done doing this, then I'll start honoring that. It doesn't happen. And sometimes, life goes by and then poof, done.
Right.
So this is a way to do that and work on how you're living now, but it's also a way to give your family the gift of understanding what is most important to you so that when that final period of time, that final chapter comes along, they're able to be present with whatever emotions are coming up, bonding with the family, spending time with you, not where does mom want to be buried? What kind of life celebration or funeral does she want? Does she have a DNR? Should we intubate? Does she want a feeding tube? Like all of these things that families just should not have to worry about.
Right. Agreed.
It should all be done. Like they should know what your wishes
Stephanie
are.
and I have this conversation all the time because we see it with clients, not quite to the end of life that we're talking about, but downsizing, just your house, your existence, where you're going, and your stuff. But quite honestly, in my experience, and I'm curious if you are in the same, the difficulties with the individual more so than with the family, in my experience. So we're not working with death and the concept of death, but we kind of are in many ways. We work with all different age groups, but particularly our downsizers. For many of them, they feel like they're dying by downsizing. That they're sort of
It's a step closer.
Yeah.
It's the last stop.
A last stop. And we kind of laugh and say, like, this is probably going to be your last move, and if they can have a chuckle at that, they're the ones who have already embraced it. But those who have not, I just had a conversation with my mom. She's 77 recently, and I had a conversation with her recently and said, where do you want to age? And she was...
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And she was almost offended. Right. And I said, you're 77. Like, you're not going to go the opposite way. You'll decline mentally and physically. And that may be hard for you to hear, but I need to know because I think you'd be better suited in a place that is X, Y, and Z rather than where you're at, or keep both or whatever. But just having that conversation for her seemed to be difficult. And in our experience with working with folks who are going to downsize or even dipping their toes in it, so often they'll say, well, I can just put a bed in the dining room. And those are the ones who haven't embraced the fact that they will decline at a certain point physically and mentally. And that just is what it is. It doesn't mean you're all of a sudden going to be drooling on yourself next week. It just means your kind of world is shrinking and all that you do will slow down a little bit. And you have to be mindful of falling or whatever that may be. And also at a certain point, I certainly have come to realize you can be too old. There can be a point of no return for moving, because if you are in a really big house you raised your family with, filled with stuff that you didn't get rid of, that can become a hurdle that you can't do. And not for everybody, but it becomes something for some people that they just can't. And so I think that these conversations are amazing, but I think for the individual, they can also give a lot of pushback. And I'm curious if you were to just approach your parents with this, would they get mad? Do you find that people get insulted by having these conversations, or at a point, or
When I started my training as a doula, I went to my mother and her husband, and I'm like, "Hey, let's do this. Help me practice." Nope. Nope.
Didn't want to have that.
And the irony, I guess, in that is that he wound up dying about a year later. It'll be a year in April that he died, and he finally, once he got his diagnosis, we sat down and we had some conversations about end of life for him, because now it was something that he couldn't avoid. Because it was right in front of him. So, the downsizing conversation, I look at it as maybe an opportunity to go through everything and start creating, this legacy. Let's go through all this stuff that you've collected over the years.
Right.
Tell me some stories.
Yes.
Let me take this, to my children and their children, so that your memory stays alive with us. There's so many resources out there. There's apps that you can speak into, take a picture of something, speak into it, tell the story of it, and then it's all recorded and you can send it off to whoever else is on the app with you. So your entire family has archives of all of these items. So then the fear of losing those things can be alleviated for the, the person who's downsizing.
Wow.
And
Brilliant.
now they know that it'll, it's a legacy. It'll go on. And, another question is, well, what is it that, most people are afraid? They don't want to leave. They just don't want to leave their families. So how do we keep you in the family in a meaningful way, because you are going to die one day? So how about if you become a part of this conversation? How would you like to be active in the lives of your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren? Would you like to write letters? Shall we do some videos right now? Do you want to set up certain, occasions that are going to come along that you might be not be present for? A wedding, a baby shower, all these events in life that people don't want to miss out on. Knowing that we're going to die, we can have a hand in how we can be present there.
Stop.
Wow.
Like, imagine.
I think it's so magnificent.
Wow.
Imagine, I know your mom died not so long ago. If there was a letter written to your son that he could open on his wedding day, that she had written.
Yeah, they do.
These
It
are
does
ways,
give emotion.
Yeah, of course it does.
Yeah.
And
She would have loved that, because she always wrote a poem for everyone's birthday. So she would have loved that. And the fact that she's not going to be at Gregory's wedding is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I wish that.
But how could you bring her presence into the wedding?
Well, and in a way,
Maybe
so that it doesn't. Yeah.
you could sit down and, hey, Mom, help me write this poem to Gregory. And you see what inspires you to speak to him through her, or her speak to him through you. There are ways to keep our loved ones alive. And if we let them know that that's the plan, maybe it can take some of this anxiety away.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. It's I think when you were saying people don't want to leave, I understand that. You could imagine that you're at a party with all your friends and family, and somebody taps you on the shoulder and tells you got to go. Like, yeah, it would be a bummer.
Yeah.
And you don't get to choose when, It's not like not everybody, has a long illness and they're just like, they're exhausted and like ready to go.
Right.
And they're like, I'm tapping out because I've had a long life and I'm done now.
There's a part of the workshop, we actually did this last night, where we talk about our emotional lives and, our relationship with our emotions, our relationship with the people in our lives, the emotions that are in those relationships, right? There's lots of emotion in relationships with ourselves and with other people. If you had only 3 months to live, who are the people in your life that you need to clean something up with?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the relationship with yourself could be at the top of that list. But, are there relationships that you need to work on that you want to work on if you only had 90 days left? And, there's two things happening during the workshop. We're working on this 90-day scenario, which so far nobody's died on the 90 days, on the death date. So everybody's living beyond that. Yeah, right. So you are going to live beyond this 90-day period, hopefully. So how does that change your relationships? If you don't die in 90 days and you have this relationship that maybe you're estranged from somebody that you don't want to be estranged from, but in 90 days, you've come to understand that you don't want to leave this world without saying this.
Mm-hmm.
So you write the letter, you make a video, you do something, you take a step in order to clean that up. And now that you're living beyond the 90 days, you've got a relationship that you cleaned up that now has meaning for you. So there's value in doing this work and realizing what's most important to you, because it deepens your relationships, it deepens your connection, it has you living in alignment with your priorities, and life gets pretty freaking cool because you're living knowing what's most important to you. So that eventually down the road, hopefully it's a long time from now, when you get to your deathbed, you're not anxious, you're not regretful, you're not wondering, why didn't I, why couldn't I, you know, what was I so afraid of? Now you're in this place of peace and contentment because you've lived your life in alignment with what was most important to you. It's a little bit easier to say goodbye when you've done that.
Right.
And you're not living in regret.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's intense work, but it's so valuable.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so rewarding.
So my close experience with death is sudden death. My grandparents, you know, they were, well, anyway, so my closest experience is sudden death, which has done what you just described for me in many ways. I truly, gosh, I'm getting a little weepy. I
can't talk either.
Truly understand that tomorrow is not promised. And there is so much beauty with that. So much. There's a lot that I don't sweat. I mean, that perspective was hard earned, but I would encourage anybody to take a workshop with you, because if you don't have that perspective, it would make life a lot more anxiety producing, and you would think that it just goes on, and it doesn't. And that's the beauty of life, right? Is death, that it doesn't last forever, and there's so much that we worry about that we just don't need to.
Right.
And you're so right when you gain that perspective, you kind of float at a different level. You really do. And it's like learning to prioritize your to-dos, right? So in work for me years ago, I'd go to work on a quiet Sunday afternoon, and if I had 10 things I had to do, but really only had time to get 4 done, I had to pick the most important ones. And when you do that, you realize just all this stuff just goes away. It's so beautiful. These tears aren't of like sadness. It's the conversation. People get real squirrely about death. It's funny. And it's almost like that they feel that that's supposed to be the reaction that you're supposed to have. But to the conversation earlier, like, we all do it, right?
I think the tears are from in alignment with truth. Like, I think that brings up such intense emotions.
Yeah.
That you're aligned with the truth of what's real.
Right. Yeah.
I joke about, you know, how I fight with my husband now since I've done this work. And he's done this work too. He was actually like forced. He was one of my guinea pigs during my practicum. We fight differently because it's like, really? Like, this is what we're arguing about?
Right. Right.
This is not important.
Yeah.
You know, when he leaves on a trip, it's a different goodbye.
Yes.
Than when before I did all of this. Life has a lot more richer meaning.
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, you don't sweat the small stuff.
No.
It just falls.
Yeah.
I can't even breathe right now, and I have a lump in my throat.
Take a deep breath.
And I just want to burst out into tears. I'm trying to hold it back.
I did a little bit.
Just
That's
so
another
deep.
thing is that we do that. We hold back our tears. We hold back our emotions, and that's what makes us human. Is our feelings.
Yes. Yeah.
So we should feel all the feels and explore what that emotion is coming from. Like, why are you holding your breath? Like, what's so intense that you can't let go? What are you afraid of if you were to start crying?
It's just too heavy. I just,
Stephanie's a yellow, so she likes to rise.
I like
up. She
happy.
likes to be up here
I like to sweep
and not in
everything
any
under
of
the
this.
carpet. I just feel terrible the way my mother passed away. And I feel terrible that I wasn't with her at the end. And I still have, all that guilt. And I don't know really where she wanted. She always talked about Sharon Memorial, but it didn't happen. She got cremated. My father cremated her, which actually I think is better because now my father has her in a display with lights and flowers.
Love that.
Right? And I feel like she would like that way better than the cemetery. We don't even go to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And she always would say, "You girls will never visit me. You don't go." And we don't go. So I actually think this worked out. But yeah, we never had that we never had a final goodbye. And it hurts.
So if you're open to a suggestion, I would say write her a letter. People die the way I say this is loaded, the way they want to and when they want to and with who they want to. So I've been with families who have said, I want to be there when Dad dies. And Dad holds on until you leave the room and then he dies. And that happens often. Sometimes they'll hold on just to wait for somebody to arrive. And once that person arrives, then they let go. So to, have regret, to live with regret, maybe your mom wanted to die without you there.
It's funny because when she came out of the hospital and she was hospice, had come to the house in Florida, and Alexa was there, and she asked Alexa to please put on her makeup. And because my mother, my mother, Aimee, and Meredith knows my mother. My mother was always dressed to the nines, always a fashionista. And as soon as Alexa put that makeup on my mother and she looked in the mirror, she let out a sigh, and she was good. That was it. And she died with her makeup on. But she was just, okay, I still look good.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to Amy's point, she died on her own terms.
Yeah, she did.
It was all on her own terms.
She did. She didn't go to the doctor. She didn't want to go to the doctor. And she really did. And my sister would fight with her all the time. And, we really talked about, this was my mother's journey. And she didn't. So if they had found the cancer, who knows if she even would have done the chemo. So she really did, to your point, it was her journey, and she died at home. And yeah, I guess I wasn't there, but my dad was there and whatever. And she had her makeup on. Yeah. So
she was.
I'm actually already starting to feel better, girls.
I mean, I think sometimes our emotions get clouded with the sadness that we miss someone because they were so impactful in our life.
Right.
And yeah, so I would, I mean, you were in close contact. You did not abandon her at any point, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I would let that guilt go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let it go.
Yeah.
And truly, a letter is so powerful. It's so powerful.
You'll be sobbing right through it.
I know.
Yeah.
You're like,
but it gets,
Right.
I mean, there's emotion inside because she's not here. And, maybe you speak to her.
She channels through me a lot.
Yes, she does.
Yes. A lot of things I say are very Lois-esque.
Lois-esque.
Yeah.
There's certain things that you want to say. Write it out. I mean,
Right.
you can keep it, you can burn it, you can do whatever you want with it, but at least it gets the emotion out of your body and that's causing you this, tightness and lack of breath.
Right.
I mean, that's our life, is our breath.
Right.
Okay, Aimee, so if we go home to our loved ones, what are some questions that we could ask to initiate these conversations?
Well, it depends on who the loved one is.
Your spouse.
Your spouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or your partner,
if you you want to start with, I love you. I want to know what's most important to you at end of life. And I think these conversations are important. And I'd like to set aside some time for us to have this conversation, because I think you kind of bulldoze in and they get on the defensive and they're, whoa, hold on. So just a little bit of I'd like to have this conversation with you about our end of life wishes. When can we do that? So now they have some time to prepare.
Oh,
they have some time to get ready for this.
Smart.
And then I would just write down some questions. Just get curious. What do you want to know? You know, where do you want to be buried? How do you want your body disposed of?
Right.
Is it important for you, for the medical system to do as much as humanly possible to save your life? Or, do you want to die at home? And, these are questions, these are, advanced care directives, and who's your healthcare proxy. Those are very important things to do. That's the legal, practical aspect of all of this. But also, where do you want to be? What kind of music would you want to be listening to? Is there a life celebration or a funeral? And, you get deeper and deeper into the conversations. There's a lot of different resources out there that can help you to just start the questions. But just be curious about your loved one.
So I'm struck by, asking questions like, would you want a funeral or end of life celebration? Because if you are able to ask and get an answer from someone, it will really put their personality on those events. Rather than, there are going to be some things where, for me, I would just say, the care, whether it's home or hospital, it doesn't really, either is fine. So your decision on that based on convenience of life at that point for you, I'm fine with it. And then there's other things, I don't want an open casket, right? Where you can say like these little things, and who knows how your death will come, whether, all of these wishes will be able to even be materialized, but it's certainly good to get that feeling so that your loved ones who will be planning, that's how it works.
Right.
You die, you will die. And someone, likely your loved ones, are going to have to make these decisions. So to your original point, help them.
It is a gift. It is a kindness to do this work so that your family knows what you want.
Right.
And, people, and I think as a society, we're moving away from the traditional funerals, right? So it doesn't have to be this low energy, somber event where everybody's hysterically crying.
Yes.
It's like there was a life that was lived.
Yes.
If you think we go back to the birthing thing, we go to birthing classes, we get the nursery all set up, we have the baby shower, all the family charges in to help, the new family get ready.
Yeah.
Well, how do we prepare for the end of life?
Yeah.
We need to give it the same kind of reverence that we do the beginning of life. So how do we celebrate this person that has spent from, this year to this year? And, you've heard that, the saying about the dash, how do you live your dash?
Yep.
So how do we celebrate the dash?
Right.
How do we rejoice that you are in this world? For me,
I love that.
Favorite color is purple. I want everybody at my life celebration to wear some shade of purple.
Oh,
I want to look down on that and go, oh man, that looks cool.
Yes.
Right? And I have a playlist. So you were talking about sudden death.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks after lockdown from COVID, my brother died suddenly. Massive heart attack. So not only was it unexpected, but we couldn't be with family.
Right.
We couldn't fly out to California to be with his family and do anything to celebrate or commemorate his life. There were no funerals to be had, nothing. So 2 years later, we all got together in California and we had a celebration that he would have been proud of.
Oh, I love it.
And there were pictures all over the place, and there was a cocktail menu, like with his personality for each one of these drinks. And there was a loop of pictures going on the TV that you could just sit there and look at him from birth to almost the last day of his life.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. And we, people there were like, I want to do something like this.
That's amazing.
I want my life to be celebrated. I don't want my people to be sad. I want them to celebrate. I want to tell stories. And this is another thing in the workshop that we do. It's like, well, who do you want to be there with you? And how do you want them to celebrate your life and the relationship that you had? Pictures and photo albums and stories, and there's just so much that you can do. It's at the disposal of your creativity.
Right. Oh, I love it.
Wow.
So can I ask you what happened? So he died, and then what did they do during that period? I've heard only horror stories. So they took him, and then you guys just couldn't do anything.
We couldn't do anything. We couldn't do anything.
Well, it was like Lois died in COVID too, so we didn't have a funeral.
Yeah.
We streamed online though.
But that was really nice.
Yeah,
it was the first I'd ever attended, and it was wonderful.
And honestly, it worked out for the best.
It was shocking.
Yeah,
I mean, it was 5 days before his 55th birthday. It was just so unexpected. Yeah, it was a big, full of life person, and it was shocking.
And then that's it. You don't get to. I mean, someone passes, I do love a celebration of life, but I also, like, after someone passes, I feel like I need to go pay my respects.
Yes.
Right? And I love the way Jews do death, where you have the Shiva. And certainly you can go to someone's house, but like for the Catholics, it's not like, you don't expect people to just come over. I guess you would, your close friends, sort of, but not always. And so to just have a celebration of life.
You're inviting people to come.
Yeah, it's like that, feels like that nebulous feeling. Like I have a few friends who have lost parents, and they're just doing a celebration of life, and I don't ever get that touch, right? Mm-hmm. Like, whether it's a Shiva or a wake or a funeral, where you can support your friends who have lost someone by just having a celebration of life months afterwards. And that limbo period must have been really hard for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And not being with family. I mean, there's some family on the East Coast, but his family was on the West Coast, and not getting together was hard. Yeah.
I guess it's a human need to do that after someone dies, is to get together.
Yeah.
And
COVID
sort of pause life.
Created a lot of sadness.
Yeah. Oh, it's a bummer. Yeah. Okay. So hospice and death doula. How does that dovetail partnership?
So we kind of fill in the gaps. So we are completely non-medical. I have zero medical experience. What I provide is a presence. Mm. And when hospice comes in, they come in, a nurse will come in one or two times a week. Volunteers come in. I volunteer as a hospice companionship volunteer and bereavement volunteer. And a chaplain and a social worker, but they have a limited amount of time that they can spend with any one individual. Mm. So I can fill in the gaps there. Oh, okay. I can stay longer. I can do more by doing less. Mm. Like I can sit and provide respite for the family who needs breaks, especially if somebody is getting cared for at home and there's a caregiver who is doing a lot. Right. They need time. They need to take care of themselves. They need some respite. So I can sit with that person, have conversations with them. Sometimes they tell me things that they won't tell their families, their fears, their fears for their families, why they're holding on. And so we have some, deep, meaningful conversations. And, I keep it to myself, but just by having that talk, saying it to somebody can help relieve some of the anxiety.
How do you keep yourself emotionally protected and healthy?
So it's important for sure. I have a notebook where I write about everybody that I've worked with who has died. If I can get a picture, put a picture of them in there, talk about, the relationship that we created together, what I learned about this person. So journaling is really important for me. This work is a privilege. It's an honor to do this work. My turn. I never in a million years expected to do this. Mm. It was not in my in my plan. But I feel like it was a calling. And so I see this as what I'm meant to be doing, and it doesn't impact me emotionally the way one might think, because it does feel like such a privilege to do the work. I mourn appropriately for me, and just understanding that this is a process. This is part of life. Dying is a part of life, and it can. And I know some people don't like hearing this, but it can be beautiful.
Right.
Being at the bedside of somebody who is dying can be a spiritual and beautiful and heartwarming experience. It's a privilege.
What is it like? Because I've never witnessed anyone die. So what is it like that moment after when you're like, okay, they're dead?
Yeah. So
before they're here, and then
now they're not.
A second later, they're not.
Yeah.
So what do you witness physically?
I wish I could answer this question, because I have not actually witnessed a death. It's I've been there moments before. And like I said, some people want to die by themselves. I've been there hours before. I've been there days before. But I have never actually been there in the moment of death.
Wild. What about you, Steph? Have you ever seen anyone die?
Well, yeah, my clients called me to sell their house, and I hadn't seen this gentleman for quite a few years, and and he was a big guy, and so now he was sick, and so they wanted to sell their house. Well, I didn't realize how sick he was. He was on the deathbed. And I had asked the wife some type of a roof question. And she said, well, let me go ask John. And then she pushes open the door, and there he is, gray. And she's like, John. She's like, how old is the roof? And he snapped his eyes open, and he's like, I replaced that 5 years ago. And then he just went back down, and I was...
Did he die in that moment?
He didn't die he died the next day.
So he was dying.
Yeah, he was dying.
But I'm curious when you're laying there.
Oh, and you're like...
And I'm here, and then all of a sudden I'm not. Next second I'm not. Because there is that...
I know.
There is that second.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's a breath. Is it a breath?
Done. And then what physically do you see? I guess...
Well, I read so many things, people are watching their body, right? They're above, and they're like, holy shit, I look bad.
I think it depends on your relationship with the person who's dying. I think it's your, I want to say your belief system, like how open you are to what actually does happen when somebody dies. And your willingness to see what other people might not be willing to see, or feel what other people aren't willing to feel in that moment. I mean, you can read a million stories about, people seeing a spirit leave a body, or feel the temperature of the room change, or feel the spirit move through the room. A lot of people will open up a window so that the spirit can leave.
My cousin Sherry felt her hand. Somebody was patting her hand. Yeah. And she was in the hospital and she was dying.
And there's a lot of things that are happening at the end of death that, are unexplainable. You're talking about, caressing, a dying person might be caressing something that a living person, in their right mind and everything does not see. But, Fluffy the cat lived for 15 years with this person and is now dead, but they're caressing that animal who has come to sit with them. Or they're talking to, like you said, the family comes to take you home. Well, sometimes you can see, the dying person can see or feel those people in the room. They're staring up at a corner and everybody else in the room is like, oh, Dad's hallucinating. No, they're probably just seeing who's coming to take them home.
Right.
People will talk about, I need to pack. I need to get my tickets. because they're going on a journey and they know this.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to get ready. Your mom wanted to put her makeup on.
Right.
I'd want to have my makeup on too.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm with
right.
Lois.
She's going somewhere.
It was so weird too. And a friend of mine who we weren't that friendly, but we were acquaintances. We would see each other out for dinner. She actually had a dream about my mother the night that my mother passed. And she's like, whoa, because her mother had passed too years ago. But she's like, wow. She woke up and she's like, I can't believe I just dreamt of Stephanie's mother. Like, that was crazy. And then her husband, Steve, was on Facebook and he's like, oh my God, Stephanie's mother passed. And she's like, whoa. Because in the dream, it was she and her mother, who didn't really know my mother, said, Lois, where are you going? And my mother said, I haven't decided yet.
That's a cool story.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so freaky.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, my father, he's all set. He already told us he is getting cremated. He's already called the company. He put it on his credit card for extra points. And it is all set. So that's all set.
Would you want to be sprinkled somewhere?
So it's funny because now we have my mother's ashes and,
Right.
and she'll stay with my father until he passes. But we're like, what the hell are we going to do with mom's ashes? We're
Right.
like, we can sprinkle in front of Macy's
Yeah.
and TJ Maxx. Like, this is seriously, the talk we're
Yes.
having. But what are you supposed to do? Because
There's
I'm not
so
really
many
familiar with this because when I was growing up, nobody got cremated. But now it seems to be the thing to do. It's like,
Yeah, so you can, and we did this for Bill, my mother's husband, who died last April. We made these. Well, we had made. They take a couple of teaspoons of ashes and these crystal. They're like rocks,
Oh,
and
nice.
inside the rock you can see the spiral of the ashes.
Oh,
There's a company that makes stones out of your ashes, so you can just have a bowl of stones, decorative stones.
Right.
And you can give them to family members. I personally want to be composted. There's human composting where your body will eventually, with organic materials, be a big truckload of dirt.
right.
Meredith,
over
I feel
a
like you
month.
would do that.
Yeah, I don't want to be turned into a stone or anything.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, quite honestly,
Right.
that's up to my. Hopefully, I'll have loved ones that'll make this decision. We all hope. But I just don't. My job. I see people burdened with stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't want to burden anybody with as stuff. I think like I don't know.
Right.
Put me in the wind or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, you literally, it's like a pickup truck
Yeah.
size pile of dirt
Yeah.
that can be used. It's a composting. Can't
Can
be
you
used
please
for
get
food,
composted?
but it can be used to grow trees and
Yeah.
flowers. And,
Or you could just put ashes. That actually adds to compost too.
Yeah.
Nicely.
Yeah.
Carbon.
Right.
The composting is, it's better for the environment. Aquamation,
Yeah.
it's like cremation, but with it's alkaline hydrolysis. So it's a little bit better for the environment,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you get basically the same material at the end.
Yeah. It's wild.
I feel like we should bring you into our clients' houses. Like, what can you do for them? The elderly clients.
Well, I think having these conversations.
Having the conversations, that's
it's
the
like-
first step
it's like
is
this,
to talk
right.
about it.
And I feel like I was in a bubble this whole podcast because it's just so
Deep.
it's so deep. And-
Yeah. How do you get paid?
Oh, good question.
Cash. No.
So if I call you,
Envelopes.
how does that work? And I say,
Well,
hey,
if you sign up for my workshop, you can, you pay for the workshop.
Yeah.
But if you hire me as a doula,
Yep.
it's a package.
okay,
We decide ahead of time how many hours, we think we might be working together. And, it's a sliding scale. I'm never going to say no to somebody because they can't afford to do this work. I
so
think this work
I could
is
say
important.
to you, I have a spouse who is just put in hospice, and I think we're going to need to have your conversations, and then you kind of guide and say these are the packages that I have available, or it's just
The very first step is a conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm a right fit for them, but I
Yeah.
also want to know that they're a right fit for me.
oh, got it, okay.
Mm.
And what about just conversations like bringing in with a parent to say, you do kind of that where you could
Like bring a family together?
Yeah, like even like I had the conversation with my mom, could I hire you to come in and have this open conversation with our
most
family?
Definitely. I mean, as a doula, that's one of the first things I do is to bring the family together and say, okay, what do you understand is happening to mom?
Yeah.
And then we just kind of go around the room so that we have, like, everybody understands where everybody else is thinking, and then we can clarify and get everybody on the same page. And then based on those conversations, we're working through emotions and feelings. Like, that's the first thing that we need to do, is just to get everybody so that they feel seen and heard. Because a lot of people get, there's family dynamics.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's messy.
Right.
So just getting everybody to talk is the first step, and to understand where we are on this board. And then we can take in mom's wishes, find out what those are, make sure everybody understands what her wishes are. And then start to just see how everything's unraveling from there, because every family situation is going to be different. So I want to meet them where they're at. Yes, I want to start with a conversation, getting everybody on the same page. But then it's kind of, well, what do you need? What does this family need? And that just kind of reveals itself.
Oh, okay. All right, Steph.
I would say,
I mean, you're amazing, Aimee. Absolutely amazing.
I would say if this is A, scaring you, or B, intriguing you, start thinking about conversations with your loved ones. Just starting a conversation. Have them listen to this podcast.
Right.
What came up for you listening to this podcast? So it's just dipping your toe into the conversation. If you feel like you want to go deeper, go on my website, look for the next workshop,
Right.
Or I do workshops with people privately. Like I did a couple, couples, mother-daughter, a whole family, so if you know that you want to dig into this work, grab a few friends, grab your family. Let's get the conversation going, because that's where this all starts, is talking about it.
They're good conversations to have on your birthday. By the way, I got your cupcake, so you have a little sugar in your future.
She looks a little shell-shocked right now.
I am so shell-shocked. Well, I feel like now there's so much I need to do. I feel like, right?
Well, isn't for all of us, right? I needed to execute our will 3 times, and but I kept having babies, and so my attorney said stop having babies and then come back. And that was 12 years ago, or 11, so I need to go back. That's a conversation I need to have, right?
But it's like, I don't even know where I put mine. Like, what happens what if somebody can't find it?
Well, you want to do something so that that's not the case,
right?
Because then they're at the at the mercy of trying to figure out what you would want.
Yes,
right.
Hopefully, your attorney has a copy.
So my dad never kept copies of wills. He gave them to people. We'd kept people after the fact, and he always said, "Put it in your freezer."
Because eventually somebody's going to
the freezer, and that's where they would find mom and dad's will.
Wow.
Because it was like, it's never going to get lost there. Put it in a Ziploc bag and leave it there. And if there's a fire, he said, it's not going to burn inside the freezer.
I know. It's like, how many copies do you need? Who's supposed to have copies? These things do keep me up at night as part of my anxiety.
But I think if
my
we get them
life
done,
insurance
and
policies.
That's exactly right.
I just need to I do have my will. And I do have life insurance policies, but nobody knows where anything is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. So
I have a firebox. Do you have a firebox?
I do not.
Get a firebox.
Maybe we should get you a firebox. That's where all our important documents are.
Exactly.
And if nothing,
where do you
that's
keep
where the
it?
passport under the bed.
Oh,
it's locked.
Did you hear that, listeners?
Yeah,
it's under her bed.
You can get my
firebox.
No, but there's little important things in there.
Right.
Like there's some pictures if there was a fire that I didn't want burned, in there, and I actually keep gift cards in there too. If there was a fire, put gift cards.
So here's something that I want everybody listening to do.
Interesting.
Go online and Google legacy contact.
Yes. Oh, I did this with
So
my phone.
for your iPhone,
Yeah.
I think it's just for iPhone. I'm
Yep.
not sure about Android, but you can set it up so that if you die, they don't need your face or your password to open your phone. You can
Yeah.
That is so important.
You
We
can
couldn't
appoint-
get to Mother's phone. Yes.
You can appoint somebody as your legacy. You can appoint more than one person as your legacy contact.
Yep.
And then with proof of your death certificate, you send that off to Apple and you have full access to their phone.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. I
That
gotta
saves
do that
a
with my
lot of
husband.
trouble.
Yeah. I have 40,000 pictures on my phone.
Yeah.
Of my kids.
Yeah, there's passwords in there. There's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yes.
stuff in your phone.
Can people not go through my texts, please?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
You might see
seriously?
things you don't want to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
start deleting?
Right.
Just delete.
That's another thing.
What?
If you have a box of anything that you don't want somebody to see, you need to have a bestie.
Yes. I have one.
You have somebody who
Yep.
can go to your house.
Yes.
You got one too,
Oh, sorry.
Adam?
Oh,
we
no,
have 5
he's telling
minutes.
us 5 minutes.
Oh.
Well, I got rid of pictures. So I had a stage of my life, 6th grade through just after my 20s, where I took a lot of photographs and they weren't digital. And I thought to myself, if I croak suddenly, my poor family is going to be burdened with all these pictures. They're going to want to know who these people are. And there's a lot they don't need to see. Not that I have like a shady history, but they're not going to want to see.
I think you have a shame.
Maybe a little bit, but I went through with my 2 best friends because they were in most of the pictures, and we got rid of those photos. And I revisited, enjoyed them, and then we purged.
And
I-
you can also digitize it.
You
You can
can.
take pictures
Yeah.
of pictures,
Yeah.
and then it's digitized.
But I thought I came across a bunch of them, and I thought maybe this person would want to see this picture. And I tested the waters. It was just them in like 7th grade, and they were not happy. So I threw all the rest of them away.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And then I did the same thing after you did that.
Yeah.
And journals. If you've got
Yeah.
journals that
I
you
have
don't
a
want
girlfriend that
anybody
totally-
reading,
Yeah. But I think I need to go through them and just get rid of them. I do have a girlfriend that I said, if I croak suddenly, there's a box of journals from my younger years. And, you got to go in and get rid of them. But
and adult things too that you might not want your children to find.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Oh, boy. Now we're getting
Me?
that's a
Could be
topic for
traumatic.
Another yes. A
Right.
conversation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're like, because sudden death happens, folks,
Yes.
right? You
Right.
could die
We know
tomorrow.
this.
Yes.
Correct.
You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And you need to have that in your mind that this could happen. And it's for the people who are left behind.
It is.
Not so much for you, but for them, and making things easier. Yeah, I'm gonna look through my emails and get on Attorney Reservitz and get that well done too. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for coming. Steph, thanks for setting this up. This
Thanks
has been
for having me.
magnificent. What a gift.
Thank you.
I had to hear more about it. I was
Yeah.
like, what is Aimee up to?
Will you come back?
Absolutely.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Yes, there's so
there's
much
a lot of talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so much.
more. This is
Well, happy
something.
birthday.
Happy.
Deep conversations on your birthday.
Thanks.
It's a good time to reflect on your life.
Yes, it is,
It
Aimee.
is.
It is a great
is.
time to reflect. And you have a beautiful life and so many people who love you.
Thanks, Mare.
Yeah.
This work definitely makes you more grateful for what you have.
Right.
For sure.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. I guess that's it. Deep conversations on this Wednesday in February. The sun's shining, at least. It wasn't this morning. It was gray as can be. And
All
we're going to
right.
go out and the
Yeah,
sun's
it's a
shining.
beautiful day.
Yeah. Have a cup
They
of cake.
all are.
Yeah, they all are.
Wait, can I just mention that the very first cigarette I ever smoked was with Aimee
Really?
in the woods.
How often did you smoke cigarettes?
I didn't.
Oh.
But Amy's like,
I
"What?"
was one of those influenced.
She was one of those. She's like, you want to smoke a cigarette? I'm like,
Absolutely.
okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
And that was it. I smoked a cigarette with Aimee. That's how we can end the podcast. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. We're going to have Aimee back.
Bye.
Thanks, Adam. Peace out.
Bye.